So I've been doing a little bit of a look at Audit Trail and trying to just help out to get it moving forward a bit, because I know it's a feature that people are looking for and wanting. And there was nothing wrong with the original PR, but it just needed a little bit of work to kind of come up to, I'm going to say the Orchard core stuff, because it came quite a lot from Orchard 1. So some of the stuff is the UI and then just reworking the display drivers and the like. And some of it needs to be worked into features, and we moved, John 3's already done a lot of work moving the code around from different modules so that it's in the right modules. So originally there was a table, which some people liked, some people not so much.
I want a table.
And now there is no table. The table could come back, because I'm not really particularly picky about.
I trade you. Remove the table here and put it back. Put it in the operators. And then,
well, it depends if Zoltan is happy with that.
Probably the table here would be better.
You don't know what you're saying.
I have a before and after shot. Should we look at the before and after shot? Actually, no. Let me go through.
Oh, wait.
Got
let's ask Paris Noble to create a what's the name? A poll about what do you prefer, a table or list?
I think he needs to do a style guide first, and then we can do a poll.
Okay.
Yes. Right. Anyway, so this gets the same filter arrangement. Did this morning when it worked. Okay, one of them isn't working. That one works. Still no table, I'm afraid, here. But the kind of sorts you can do here is the event categories, the name of the user. Might call that user. Not sure yet. Date, which I haven't quite finished yet, but will be in the syntax of date start. So 10, and then a dot syntax for a range.
Is it October 10 or 10 October?
Well, I couldn't decide, so I decided to go for 10-10 or 10 to 10.
And yeah, that's how do you parse that? Is it using localization? Is it? I mean, it has to.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be that will be a little trickier, but I was going to rely on date pickers to grab this. I mean, we need to pass this anyway. We were already passing it. Really, it's just about getting the 2 dots in the middle for range, or no dots means no range, or dots at the start mean that it's a from range. But also it will be from a picker, so no big deal there, I don't think. But we need to figure out which month it's going to be, whether it's month, day, day. Right, so what else have we got? The other thing we looked at was what to do about the tables here. And there are still tables here.
They're fine.
And I had a little bit of fun with React yesterday and put in a little Diff Viewer as a so we've got 2 possibilities here. So this is your kind of, well, the Diff Viewer that you would expect to get if you're looking at things in GitHub, which has a nice little split view or a unified view. And conveniently, because I experimented with it, but only on the refresh, a nice little dark mode view as well, which is quite pretty, I have to say. Or we have the more the traditional view, which is
Sultan, say something.
I like the new one better.
Thank you. It's okay, you're So you have two problems then. If Zoltan agrees, I mean, it's the boss.
Well, I think it's probably easier to just get a quick
And you
visual
have,
sense of what's going
and you
on.
have the choice. You still have the unified if you want, and even the unified looks better than the all unified. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to prefer a unified view, but rather than a split view. But that's just me. So they're both there. What I was considering doing on this page as well is I did put them in cards, but I'm not liking the cards. And I was actually thinking that it might be nice to have this screen, which is super easy to render, which is the actual what it looks like in terms of an editor, and a tab on here. So you had split, unified, actual code, or actual edit view as such. Because quite often when you are diffing something, you do really want to see kind of what it looks like in the context of how you edited it, or how you would edit it. But that's just for ideas.
Yeah, it looks nice if you have the third option, because not everyone is able to read JSON and understand what it means, or find their information in the JSON. Might be confusing for some editor.
Yeah, so I thought it was probably useful, probably worth having here, because like the first thing that I realized with these audit trail lists is they get very long very quickly. So you don't want to be spending a lot of time going back to the main view so that you can view this one or have the details. So did that, looked at, and there's just lots of options here at the moment as well. So when I looked at, when I looked back at O1 to see this, in O1 we don't store the entire content item every time it gets saved. We store a delta, which is used to produce the diff, whereas here we're storing every content item every time it gets saved. So every time I go to here and click save, saving in another version of it. Even though this is only a draft, we're grabbing a new version, and I know you guys wanted this particularly. Zoltan. But when we look at these, we've got version 11, version 11, version 11, all with a massive chunk of JSON next to them, and a tiny diff. So one of the other possibilities to kind of look at is whether we really do need to store the entire thing in these circumstances, or whether or not we could just store a delta. Here's another viewer here, which I looked at, which is available for .NET, which actually is a JSON diff syntax, which is quite interesting just in itself. So the actual JSON gets stored with, well, it just gets stored as a diff rather than getting stored as the entire chunk of JSON. I quite like the array example that he has here, because here he's just showing moves, because he's got it specified an array, how to mark the arrays and how to identify the values. So I think that's something that's kind of worth just thinking about, whether or not we do really want to store the entire content item on every save, or because we already have them in the version table as well, with the content item document table.
Is the concern with size, or because, I mean, it's implementation detail? Who cares about storing everything or a diff?
So some people have expressed concern about size. Other people kind of wondering why we're seeing. So, okay. let me show you something that could happen without this feature at all. So this is the one that we're looking at here, the most recent change. So we could have potentially, right now, without an audit trail module at all, this is the history of this content item. These are all the versions that we have, and you will excuse the UI because there is no table, and I did it rather quickly this afternoon just to see what we had already. So we're comparing the most recent one with just the previous one every time. So these are already in the database. They're right here. To have a restore button which shifts this from published to, to latest would be a matter of putting another button here. Or we go the whole hog with Audit Trail, or you have both potentially. You know, because one is a feature for just your average CMS user, and Audit Trail provides this full-on sequencing thing where you've got all of the changes for this article that have been recorded in the Audit Trail.
And Audit Trail is not just for content items.
And Audit Trail is not just for content items. Somewhere in here you will find a user as well.
It could be settings, configuration, users, roles.
Users, roles. I think roles was an Orchard one. I'd quite like to see an implementation for templates because that's really useful.
Can it be events like user login, logout?
So Gabor's already done the user login, logout. Where's the settings? JT changed the settings again the other day. So we've got all the content events and all of the user events. I just added updated yesterday because updated wasn't in there, and thought that was, for us, that's reasonably important because people change email addresses and people change names and usernames, and it's caused us grief in the past, I suppose. So I haven't got a diff for users yet, but I think potentially we might need to be able to demonstrate what the original username was and what the new username was. We have to be a little careful about revealing passwords and the like. Not that passwords are in the UI, well, not that passwords are unsalted, but I just have to restrict the diff, I suppose. So yeah, options, I suppose, because I think it was just worth exploring them before we go ahead and merge it to just see which areas we could get in without, in a way where we can improve it without breaking it further and implement more stuff. So yes, table. Who wants a table? Who wants some consistency with the existing UI?
I prefer the consistency. And it works in dark mode.
But now tables work in dark mode as well, no?
Nah,
there was a patch.
It's broken. It's Jean-Thierry. Don't trust Jean-Thierry CSS.
So I have the original, so I have this one here, and I am not 100% sure that showing the title here as the first thing is necessarily the right thing.
And what happens if it's a user change? It should be a
yeah. So the user, it's the username, and at the moment it will link through to actually editing that user. In the same way that the links here will take you through to editing the content item. But the original UI kind of, and oh look, here it is.
A custom display mode.
Sorry for interrupt you, but as you can see, there's a comment column here. So you can use a command column if you attach the Audit Trail part to a given content type. How can you show the content of the command column in this new UI?
That's what I'm saying.
So-
It should be a custom display type, and you can even customize everything if you want.
I haven't added any comments here, Gabor, but right now, if I had, they show up here and the view expands. So the comment gets listed underneath as a full sentence or multiple sentences is the intention there. What I found when I was looking at the table, particularly bad when I open up this, is that the table shrinks like this, which makes this wording very hard to actually, when you're looking at a massive list, to actually make sense of, because the sentences become too compressed. So on a smaller screen, and same with the comment, which is why the idea was to move it in the same way that there is a content zone. And again, it's not here, but there's a content zone underneath here where you can render custom stuff, and the view just expands. And same thing with the, where are we? With the IP address. The IP address is here, but there's a setting to turn the IP address on and off. So when there's no comment or no IP address, it was a bit weird to have a column there that was just empty and taking up wasted space. Did that make sense?
And custom display type. So if you want to customize exactly how it renders, when there is a comment or when it's a custom type, then customize it.
Yeah, it makes sense, but can we also add the summary, the content of the summary column, for example, under the comments one? So in that case, we will have, for example, 3 lines there. One shows the one that we can see right now. The second one could show the content of the comment, and the third one could contain the summary one.
You mean this summary text?
Yeah, the summary text.
The summary text. Yeah, we certainly could. It could be 2 lines. It may well fit together quite well. Drag that out to full size. It may well fit together quite well. I had experientially moved it to a badge here rather than the text, because I was having difficulty reading them, I suppose, and making consistent sense of what they were. But that could be a good option. I can't decide about the title first. I don't think that's right. I think it should probably go content, the event name, and maybe then the title, or maybe the title needs to move back over here as part of that text you're just talking about. Anyone have any preferences on that?
I don't know which would be the better in this case. Yeah, the original Audit Trail table don't have a title for these content item events.
Yeah, that's
No,
why
the title turns up here in the summary, which maybe is better because it's more visible what it is.
Yeah, or maybe we could use the event name as a title here, but I'm not sure about that also. So as you can see, restored, created, published. I'm not sure.
I'll have a little bit of a play around, and I'll try and I'll get the comment in as well. I was going to change the comment part to use Markdown rather than, because it's got it passes HTML at the moment. So if it passes HTML, I need to sanitize it. Or you can start running JavaScript on this page from editing a comment. So it's probably going to change that to use a Markdown parser, just for safety, just for security, really. So I will get that changed and see if we can't get it visible in here and jiggle around these a little bit and put a couple of pictures up for people to have a look at options and see what we can come up with. Now we have the text of what happened, the event or the category of events, so we have the user category and the content categories, the description of kind of what happened. This is comment text that can be entered on here. Which is the part.
So the IP address that was displayed, by default, is it gathered or not? If I enable the Audit Trail module.
It's in the settings for Audit Trail here, which is where we found we needed the tabs. Events, where's it? Allow client IP. Gabor, can you remember if that's on by default or?
That's on by default.
Okay, I need to check with, for instance, Microsoft security principles, because it might be private information. I'm not sure. Personal identifiable information, and that might be an issue if it's. I know there are rules like you can't. I know in Microsoft you can't log things like this, for instance. I have to check again. I had a training 2 weeks ago about it, and I don't for that. If it's not, then we should disable it by default. For instance, that would be a blocker in Microsoft. They will say, no, you can't have it by default, change it, and that might be confusing because personal information. Yeah, you see, Dave is mentioning in the chat that GDPR stuff is very strict. So,
yeah, that was actually something I brought up as another issue on this, which we at some point will need to address, is because we, by default, the user feature is on, which logs when users log in and all the other things that happen to users, which is great. But it's not a feature, so I can't turn it off. I can disable them, but I probably need to turn it into a feature. But there's also no way to delete this from a GDPR point of view. So if I come along and say I want to delete my account, get rid of me, all those logs are still going to remain there. So that's probably something we also need to just consider, is whether or not there's some kind of extra permission which actually allows somebody to clear these events out.
And I'm not concerned actually, because it's not, Audit Trail is not enabled by default in our feature. So at least that's it. We have that. It's not enabled by default, so it's not gathering data without any user action to say it's gather data.
Yeah. No, it's not enabled by default at the moment. And equally, I think that's a feature that we can, like, dealing with an issue like that is a feature that we can deal with later as a later feature for Audit Trail.
Cool. And Dave is mentioning, and he also mentioned that we'll need a feature to be able to clear all the past activity for specific users.
That's exactly what I was suggesting.
Or to anonymize it. Yeah. Also,
yeah,
thank you. Sorry.
Something along those lines. We'll need to have something for that, but I don't think that needs to block this going in, because, as you say, it's not on by default, and that we can add. So there's some other features that I just tweaked in here. If we go to the contents list, we've now got an Audit Trail button, which will automatically filter. Put the ID up here, so it's automatically filtered on that particular content item. When you do, you get to filter on the events for it as well, so you can just see the published events, or it's probably a restored event. Yeah, restored events there. Been tweaking with the sorts a little bit, which clearly I broke this bolt. There we go. Some of them working. So it now describes how they sort, and you can change them to descending. So I'll probably bring this into the content items list as well. It's just an extra feature for the thing. The difference is that we list 4 or 5, but you can actually do any modifications to those that you want, which are not necessarily in the UI. And the last one was dates. Work date. Yes, dates will work. Cool. So dates, date filters. Borrowed a little bit from GitHub here, and a little bit from Lucene, and a little bit from some Google Analytics, because dates, as was mentioned, are a little bit tricky to pass. And the big problem comes with dates on the time zones, which, funnily enough, you were just talking about the time zone changes there. So we have the concept of now minus 1 day, 2 days, as many days as you want, really. So you can have the last 24 hours. You can go now minus 2, ranged, and now minus 1, which is, yeah, like I said, the previous 48 hours.
This is the only format you can use, the number, which is a day.
Lots of formats.
Can I say 1 hour?
So you can use that. You can say greater than or equals. Actually,
can I say 1 hour?
You can say the last hour. Come here.
Beautiful. That's
So at this point, you're right. If you want to get really specific on your hours and minutes, which if you're doing an audit trail, you kind of want to sometimes, you're into full date and you're into full UTC time zone.
So the -1, what if it was 1:0, for instance? And you see, like 1 would work. And if I say 1:0:0, or 0:0:10, that would be 10 minutes.
Yeah, but I am cheating here, and I'm using a date time parser, which expects a date. So
what I'm saying is that
it could.
The previous one, when you say the last 24 hours, the format with the last 24 hours here, instead of 1, -1. What if you? So what is this? How do you parse it?
It's parlot.
So you just say integer here.
Yeah.
So if it was a time span format, then you could say 10 minutes. And 1 would still be hours.
So as in 1 or...
Yes. So 1 would be hours, but 0:0, yes. So this would be 10 minutes. Or this would be 10 hours. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
If it's not ambiguous in terms of grammar, but instead of having
to... I almost did this as 24, as in hours rather than days. So at the moment it's now -1, which is a day.
Okay. And worst case, you need some enclosure like minus a square bracket, and you pass a time span. So it could be a custom case in this case. And this way, you don't have to compute the actual date for the last day. You just say no, last day -1 day or something like that.
Yeah, just the last day minus 1 day, which was the point, to make it simple.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you want to get it complicated, then you can go to full ISO standard.
It's still super nice, because sometimes you really want to say no before this date, and not the last hour, but this date.
Exactly.
This
and if I, for example, go to this is Kiwi Dean, and Kiwi Dean's in New Zealand rather than Cornwall. So now -1 is going to give them some completely different. Oh, actually, it's not completely different, because we're all living on the same. I haven't got enough data in here to properly demonstrate it. But in terms of sharing stuff across country zones, at that point you need to start getting quite specific about which time zone it is. Or you'll start getting slightly different results. But for your general searching, I think the whole now thing works quite well. Simple and obvious.
Yeah, that's great. So what about the content item feature?
So I haven't done anything with the content item feature. I think we'll try and get Audit Trail through first. And I think we can do something with a list of history for without Audit Trail.
Yeah.
We have.
So and now, yeah, the details page. How does it look like? The views and details and everything.
I haven't had a lot of time to change stuff here. So we've got the diff, and the idea would be to tab the diff. So I'll have details here and a tab here of the diff.
Yeah,
I think. And probably put this view here, which is the actual built display, but everything disabled on a tab as well, because it's easy to render and it just makes sense. Plus, you want to be able to see if you're going to restore the content item, you want to be able to see if the definitions haven't changed so much that it won't render anymore. So I think I'll move that to the same page. So I'll have details, diff, full-blown content item, display here, or edit page here. If that makes sense. Gabor, what do you reckon?
If it's not an issue with performance to load that much content, or maybe it's just the same amount of content to load anyway. So.
It's exactly the same JSON.
Okay.
So it's just calling build display. So it's no database hit to do it all on kind of one page and make it all visible there.
Awesome. Looks awesome. Looks good.
Cool. I have one technical question that I was just looking at stuff on and thinking it's a little bit, and I look back on Orchard 1. So when it comes to restoring, which we can do here, we can go on here and I can restore this one. What we've got at the moment is a controller which does it, and some handlers which fire off events as we would kind of expect, which currently inherit from the content handler. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe this should actually be part of the content manager, because otherwise people won't pick up on these events, because you have to implement a different interface.
It will be fine. I assume it's also the case in Orchard 1. That will be fine.
Yeah, that's how it was in Orchard 1. So I just thought I thought we should probably do that just to make sense of it.
Versioning is part of the interface, so restoring might be also.
Cool. Well, this is looking pretty close, Gabor.
Yeah, I see that. I'm just about wondering the date filter feature, because in Orchard 1, I can easily say that give me the events that happened in the first 2 weeks of August this year. How can I do that easily here?
You type the date.
Type the date. So I've done 7 days, 30 days, and 90 days. By default.
No, it's, yes.
Yeah.
So type that. Type the date.
And copy paste. You can remove all the necessary part zeros, I'm sure.
Yeah, it looks for a full format when you're going dates, or actually this will work as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That it's maybe it's not user friendly.
Well, you have to type something. So if
So the other option we had there was the date fields that were there previously,
I see.
and the date pickers, and they don't work. Well, they didn't work properly because this, when you have this, is a date, and the server expected it to be an UTC. So if I take that and then I run it in a time zone when I'm a day out, for example, the New Zealand one, you get a completely different result because everything is UTC based on the server. So everything was getting passed as a UTC. So that was one of the reasons I went with a couple of variations on this, because sometimes you're going to need to be quite specific, and sometimes you can just, if you're only in one time zone, like, then it's not so much of an issue. Also felt it was quite useful to be able to actually go specific time zone, or sorry, not specific time zone, but specific, let's go 90 days. To be able to actually pick an exact time.
So I will solve that first by generating less complex times when they are like this, simple, by day, like remove the time part. When you can, if you can do that.
I can. I did a few different examples here because I figured we would have different ideas.
And if there was, in this case, a better hints, documentation, or shortcut or button to have the formats, then we would something simple like this, where we can see the format where you can type 2 dates.
Not well documented here yet, but still to be done.
The picker is useful, and it's discoverable. If there is no picker, nobody will ever figure out how to type a range. So we need a way to explain, oh, you can also type a range.
Work mouse. Excuse me a second. The cats get hair on the mouse and it stops working. So the idea was to have a couple of these with ranges. Yes, okay, so I've got a couple with ranges, so you have an example of how a range works, and then also to document it here. What we could also do, and I haven't yet, is have another option here for custom, where we just pop up a modal with a date time picker, start, finish. Which I think would probably work okay as well.
Yeah, maybe even if it's like a last option called range or time period or whatever, and then it shows a random date 1, date 2 that you can just change manually, that will still be fine.
That would probably be enough.
Because because when you say last 24 hours, then there is a -1, which is nice. It could also be, that could be one, that is dynamically computed, that shows 2 dates with the range, so that they can change the range manually, and that would be fine. Yeah, we need examples.
Maybe for one of these last 7 days or something like that, I need to do a range instead, so that there's a better example here.
But not from one of these examples, because how do you know that you have to pick the 7 days to find an example of a range? Something called range or custom period, something called custom period, you click on custom period in the list, and then it shows a random custom period, but at least you know how to type a custom period.
Yeah, that could work.
Custom period, custom range, I don't know what's the proper. You see, because last hour and previous hour, what's the difference?
Wow,
Yeah. Who cares?
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly. That became difficult to describe in a way that will be translatable as well.
I get it, but yeah, I mean, yeah. I think we just need the same way it's done maybe in GitHub. We don't need 24 and 48 or 7 and 30 and 90. We just need one, like 7 days. And then, oh no, I don't want the last 30 days, so I will change the 7 by 30. No, one with last and one with previous, maybe. And
yeah, I mean, GitHub has no UI for this at all. And GitHub is also challenged on the time zone stuff because everything's in UTC. So any of the date syntax, you have to supply UTC values to, which kind of makes sense for GitHub because they're hosted in one place, I suppose, and they have no clue on what a user time zone is.
JavaScript, but well, just add an option that shows 2 days.
A range, yeah.
A simple.
Done. Happy days.
Thank you.